Todd, what's behind the move and the energies to the upside, specifically the crude oil contract?
Good morning, Ben. Good morning, JB. Well, I think the biggest thing we really have here is this is more of a fear trade right now. If you just look at the overall pricing of crude oil and you go backwards, why is February higher price than June? That would be known as what we call backwardation. So what you're seeing is a lot of premium pumped into the near term because they're concerned about some possible trouble in the Mideast. They're concerned about a couple other things. Plus the fact that you do have OPEC and Saudi Arabia trying to manipulate the price of oil to keep it higher so they can get this Aramco deal done. I mean, to me, this is a bunch of whatever you want to call it, but I don't buy into it. I don't buy into the growth. I don't buy into any of this. I think that this is a great opportunity at some point here to sell. Now, I'm not saying today is the sell, because again, it's still going higher, but at some point here it's going to reverse as it did in 2014. When you start to see oil much cheaper out in the future, all that tells you is that the overall trade right now is more built on fear than anything else.
So hey Todd, it's JB here. I'm kind of curious. It seems to me that the stocks continue to shrug off and really not taking notice of this higher crude price. What do you see with that?
It doesn't matter. Right now, the markets themselves are in, either the greed factor, the fear of missing out, and the afraid that it might collapse, and they just keep buying. You see margin debts coming in, pushing all these oil stocks up to the moon, trying to get more of that yield out of it. I mean, we're in a situation now that is just totally absurd from a regular trading standpoint. I mean, the markets are basically just melting up. I mean, look at the futures this morning. You can see that everything is up. It doesn't matter. And you mentioned earlier about the dollar. The dollar's been down here for an extended period of time. In the meantime, no commodities had moved until recently. And if you want to tie a little bit of conspiracy into this, go back to when China said that they weren't going to buy some U.S. treasuries. The treasuries bottomed. Oil really took off, as well as the markets. That was last Wednesday, the new low of the recent run-up in these markets.
Todd, how much of this, you're talking about the dollar there, the weakness that we're seeing there, how much of this is a strong economy? I mean, we're going to need diesel for the loaders. We're going to need trucks in order to ship goods. We've been getting some really good economic data. I'm curious, away from the weakness in the dollar, how much do you attribute to the bid that we're seeing there in the crude to strengthen the economy?
Again, we have an overabundance of crude. Now, I know the EIA reports and the other reports have shown some significant drawdown, but we have the ability, and we have over a 200-year supply at current usage of oil. And of course, if we're not going to get any more fuel efficiency, then we would run out in 200 years. So I think that more of this is all based on the markets and people trying to chase places to look for to buy to try to get some return on their capital. I don't see this as a growth story. I think that oil at a growth story, 55 would be a fair level. I think at 64 it's extremely overpriced, but again, it can go higher, and I'm not getting in front of it now, but I'm certainly looking for a spot to step on it and sell it, because I don't believe the demand can outtake what we have in supply ready to go.
Yeah, Todd, I've got an interesting chart up here on the screen right now for our viewers. They can see the crude oil versus the dollar trade here. It's interesting because we saw this chart cross over back in, it looks like December of 2014. We're seeing here again right now this crossover. So yeah, a lot of strength here in the crude relative to the dollar. And it's also interesting again, Todd, because the dollar just traded below the 2017 lows. So it's been able to take out a key area here right now. I'm sort of wondering if this is just going to fuel it at this point.
It's certainly, we certainly can't pick the top and say that this is the end. I don't buy into it, but I certainly am not going to say that this is over. The dollar probably could go down a little bit farther. Again, you've got a whole mix-up of things happening here, which is also the manipulation and keeping the interest rates low. And that ties into the dollar as well. So the lower dollar until now has not fueled the crude oil price. We had a much lower dollar when crude was at 50 as well. But now we're starting to see a reason, so we're looking for reasons to push this higher. Crude can go until it doesn't go anymore, but again, I'd much more and much likely would rather be on the short side of this trade when it gets there than trying to buy it here. I don't see this big demand story that's coming to it. Again, we've got a lot of raises, a lot of good things in the tax plan, but all this should be already priced into the market. This is not a new story today. This has been going on for quite a while.
So Todd, if you're looking at you mentioned 64 as being already, you don't want to jump in front of it, but where do you start to get concerned? Is it 68? Is it 70 where you start to look at that crude price and you start to say to yourself, man, what is going on here? This has now kind of gone beyond sort of this crazy marketplace. Is there a certain price point that we should be looking at and really kind of focused in on right now?
Yeah, about $5 ago. I think, again, I was originally short. I took my losses and got out. I'm looking for a new spot. And again, one thing we all know about markets is they can go a lot farther than we think they can go.
Yeah,
The irrational trade going on here, tied in with, again, if you just look at the formation of oil, I mean, if you go out a year from now, oil is under 60. So I have to look at it from that standpoint that this is more of a fear premium trade right now. And I'm going to wait until it at least starts to show me that it can go down. Right now, it has shown no desire to even think about going down. It has gone up every week. I think for the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've gone almost straight up. And what we've really seen is some decent volume piling in here and nobody getting in the way of it. So until it shows me that at least I have a level I can pick, and right now I don't have one. I mean, I can say that we're right at a double top on 3-year highs here. That would be a reasonable spot. But the markets are very irrational right now, and you just look at what's going on in equities, looking at what's going on everywhere. You either have to be in long here or you have to wait it out, because again, I certainly don't want to be putting myself to the decision to make a decision on whether to get out once I get short oil. I will be, my next trade in oil will be on the short side. It's just a question of from where.
Yeah, all this talk of the short side, Todd's got me cringing when we're talking about oil or stock indices, futures products. I understand the thought process behind it, but I'm a big trend trade follower. This market's certainly trending higher, but I'm curious, we haven't talked too much about shale production here. We're kind of just hanging out right around that 10 million barrel per day level. We've been watching as lower rig counts for the most part across the board. Recently, increase in rig counts. But how is all the shale playing into the price of crude oil and that kind of infamous 10 million barrel a day level?
Well, I think you saw this a number of months ago when the Saudis actually approached the shale producers and asked them to slow down their production. And, it was kind of a quirky thing that had happened, but they did slow down their production. And I think that you're going to see, I mean, at these numbers, they are now making money. I think you're going to see a dramatic pickup here. I think between the cold weather, between the growth story, between the Saudi story, the OPEC story, I think you're going to now start to see the shale producers gear up and ramp up. And I think you're going to see these rig counts start to go higher. Now, again, we can go to 70, we can go to 75. There's no limit as to how high we can go. I can't put a number on it. I just understand that at the way it's going up, and if we talk about a trend, this is going up in a trajectory that's straight up, which is not even trending anymore. This is more in a blow-off formation when you look at it. But again, you can't stop in front of it, and there's no reason to try to say that I'm going to go and play in traffic and try to stop the oil. I'm going to let it go, and when I find a level, I would look to reverse on it.
Yeah, Todd, the energy is strong here for sure. This is like a freight train through the rail yards, the way I like to look at. We call it vertical up here. Todd, thanks for joining us. Some good insight there in terms of price activity in the energies.